Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures, Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, all you need to know about the Great Namibia Wildlife Safari, presented by Expedition Leader Simon Stobbs. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for the introduction, and a very good afternoon, I think it will be, to most people who are on the webinar today. As Rob mentioned, my name is Simon Stobbs, and I'm coming to you from Johannesburg in South Africa, where it's 9 o'clock in the evening. We've just enjoyed a fantastic autumn day here with temperatures in the low to mid 80s, so a fantastic time of year down here in Southern Africa. Just a little bit about myself. So as Rob mentioned, a NatHab expedition leader. I led my first trip with Natural Habitat in 2005 and have been leading trips for them ever since in countries right across Africa: Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, South Africa, Botswana, and plenty of trips into Namibia, which is a place that's very close to my heart. And hopefully for the next 40 minutes or so, I can transport you from your couches or from behind your computers into this really amazing country. It truly is a unique place, and I hope I can give you a little bit of a window into what an amazing country it is, and also a little bit of a background into the incredible trips that Natural Habitat has put together, which take in some of the highlights of this unique country. I've started with an image like this because I think it encapsulates so much of what Namibia has. It's a dry country. The bulk of the country is desert. It's an area where there's a lot of endemism as far as species go. Animals living a hardy lifestyle, surviving in very, very harsh conditions. If you just look at what you see in this image from a food point of view, there's not a lot on offer there, but an animal like this oryx, which people will see on the Great Namibian Wildlife Safari, really has adapted to live in this environment. So it's a place with desert adapted wildlife. The scenery in Namibia is spectacular. You can literally stop a vehicle anywhere in the country, point your camera, and you're going to get spectacular landscape photo opportunities. And where you get a mammal like this oryx in the image, it really is a photographer's dream. Spectacular place for photography, and NatHab do have the photo trips which also run through Namibia as well. But today we're going to be focusing on the Great Namibian Wildlife Trip. Just a little bit about the country itself. It's situated down in the southwest corner of Africa, just north of South Africa, and bordered on the western side by Botswana. Tiny little part of it in the northeast touches Zimbabwe, and it's also got a little bit of a border with Zambia. The western side of the country is flanked by the Atlantic Ocean, where the cold Benguela current runs up from the south along the western side of the coastline there. That is responsible for bringing in a lot of the weather conditions, the fog, which occurs in parts of Namibia. And it's a fog that a lot of the wildlife, insects, beetles are dependent on that water for their survival. So it plays a huge part in the whole ecosystem. As far as the size of Namibia goes, it's about 318,000 square miles in size, which puts it at about 20% larger than Texas, for those of you in the US, just to give you an idea of the size of Namibia. It's got a population of 2.5 million people about. And when compared to Texas, you're looking at about 30 million people. So 20% larger, but with less than a tenth of the people that are in Texas. Namibia is one of the least densely populated countries on our planet, and this is probably one of the biggest attractions of Namibia. Those of you who have been there will know as soon as you get outside any major center, and there only are a few, with Windhoek being the capital situated in the center of the country. If you're 20 minutes outside of Windhoek, you really are all of a sudden wide open space, very, very few people. And I think that's one of the biggest attractions of being in Namibia, is just the sense of space that one gets. And those of us living in major centers or cities around the world, I just think of somebody living maybe in a place like Manhattan, where it's very difficult to get a view of more than 1% of the sky if you heading down those skyscraper lined streets. In Namibia, you almost have a 360-degree view of the landscape from wherever you are. So spectacular country. Just to highlight some of the key locations that I'm going to be referring to during the presentation tonight, just to orientate you guys with what we're looking at. You can see on the western side, which would be the left-hand side of that map, as you're looking at it, you can see there's this section of the map that is shaded in dark. That is all parklands or protected areas down the Skeleton Coast and the Naukluft Park. So it's all protected lands down the western side. The center of the country there, you can see Windhoek, which is the major access point into the country. Guests they can fly in from Europe directly into Windhoek, or else a lot of people will head through from Johannesburg with daily flights direct from North America and also the UK, Europe into Johannesburg, and then an easy 1 hour, 40-minute flight into Windhoek. The key places which I'm going to be highlighting today are Sossusvlei. This is a desert area down in the south with the famed white pans. An area known as Damaraland, where there's some plenty of desert-adapted wildlife, and the two most prominent species found in that area would be the desert-adapted black rhino and elephants, desert-adapted elephants. Then a little bit further to the northeast, the famed Etosha Pan, Etosha meaning great white place. And you can see it gets its name from that massive salt pan right in the heart of the park there. And the last place, which I'll touch on briefly, is the Skeleton Coast area up towards the northwestern part of the country, which runs alongside the Atlantic Ocean there. Kicking off in Sossusvlei, I think when most people think of Namibia, the red dunes is an image that is conjured up. And Sossusvlei is where the red dunes are to be found. On the Great Namibian Wildlife Safari, we'll head there on the second day, straight into Sossusvlei, where we'll be spending 3 days at the camp there. The focus here is very much on exploring the dunes, but it's here for the first time that people really do get a sense of what Namibia is all about. Just to put it in perspective and show you where the camp is situated, on the safari we will be staying at Little Kulala, which you can see in the center of the image here. The key thing on why Natural Habitat has selected this camp, you'll see NatHab puts a huge amount of focus on choosing the camps. There's a great deal of science that goes into it behind the scenes. I think the one thing is they always look for small, intimate camps, and they do need to be perfectly situated for people to access the best nature experiences possible. And Little Kulala is perfectly situated for that. You can see there that it has a private gate access right into the dune corridor. You can see in the middle there, there's a road that runs right down towards Dune 45 and then ending down at Sossusvlei, Deadvlei, and Big Daddy Dune. We can get into that private gate at first light in the morning, and literally it allows us to drive down that dune corridor as the sun is rising. That road heads in a westerly direction, which means that the sun is rising behind us. If you look at all of those dunes there, you can see that they are what you call longitudinal dunes, and they typically run in either a northerly direction or a southerly direction, which means they typically get the sun at almost 90 degrees coming from the eastern side in the morning. So as you drive in at first light, heading in a westerly direction, you've got the sun painting all of these red dunes with a beautiful golden color. And it really is a spectacular sight, but the fact that we're situated close to that gate and have private access allows us to witness that spectacle. Once you get into the dunes, you'll be able to get out of the vehicle and head out and walk into the dunes. People often ask how physical or how strenuous the activities are. There are various options. People can climb big dunes like the famed Big Daddy, which is quite a tough hike. You can see some of those dunes situated at the back of this open pan here. Those are tough hikes, but for those people looking for a little bit of an easier walk, it's very easy to just hike over one small little dune, and you can get into this dead flay area where you can get these iconic images of these famed camel thorn trees set against the backdrop of the red dunes, and you're nearly always shooting that against the backdrop of a dark blue sky. The little Kalala area here at Sossusvlei is also where you get your first taste for some of the smaller things in Namibia, and just taking a close, in-depth look at all the intricacies of the ecosystem here. This image here is of a sociable weaver's nest. It's a weaver bird that nests communally, and you can literally have hundreds and hundreds of pairs of sociable weavers nesting in these trees and using them year after year, and in some cases causing these trees to collapse. There's a huge amount of symbiotic relationships associated with that. We find smaller birds of prey, such as the pygmy falcon, occurring in there. Certain snake species will also venture into those sociable weavers' nests looking for the chicks, and it really is a hive of activity. And in a place like Namibia, so much focus gets put on some of these smaller things as opposed to just the big wildlife. That it really is a place I find after being there for a week, you go back home with a different appreciation of nature. You start looking at things in your own garden in more detail because you just focus on everything that's there and take a real in-depth look at all of it. This is another example of it. You can see there's an image of an oryx here, but it's lying in a bare patch of terrain. You can see there's no grass within that area, and it almost looks like it's been manufactured. This is a phenomenon known as the fairy circle, and the little Kalala area will be your first view of these fairy circles. As you fly in, you can see this kind of a scene from the air, and it really is surreal. Scientists have been mystified about the cause of these for many, many years. There have been various hypotheses, ranging from plants secreting pathogens into the soil to termites. And the most recent one just postulates that it's the grass actually self-organizing in a way to preserve water. So that's a really new theory, so we'll have to wait and see if that holds the test of the time. But just so much mystery in this place, and it's really, there's only one or two other places on the planet where these fairy circles occur. Nighttime is also a fascinating time in this area, and again, a lot of focus on some of the smaller creatures. You can see the scorpion here. We have these fluorescent lights or ultraviolet lights in camp, and the scorpion's exoskeleton fluoresces under this, and those of you who might have seen it before, it looks a luminous green, and it's quite easy to see these guys at night. Incredible to see. If you look very carefully in and around that scorpion, you can see minute tracks, and you can actually see where that scorpion has walked. Early in the morning when you get out on your nature drive or walk, you literally get to explore the dunes and read the you're almost reading a newspaper and seeing what happened there during the night. So again, getting really in depth. You can see where the spiders walk, where the beetles have been sitting trying to collect the droplets of fog and drink them. It really is amazing to see what the sand produces in terms of tracks in the early mornings. So after spending 3 nights in the Kulala area, largely exploring the dunes and some of the smaller creatures that occur in the area, we head up by light aircraft transfer to a camp known as Desert Rhino Camp, which is situated in the Damaraland area. That's situated slightly north of midway up the country and probably about 40 miles inland from the coast. It's a large untouched area, but it's home to a vast population of black rhino, wild black rhino. It's a protected population. There's an organization there known as Save the Rhino Trust, who's done amazing work over the years to protect this population. I think the type of people who are going to be logging into a webinar like this will know the threat that rhinos throughout the world are under. But this is really a great place to view and see these incredible creatures. It's done on foot in conjunction with the Save the Rhino trackers, and it really is about research. If you have a look at the guy on the far left of this image, he's got a pencil in his hand and he will be taking down notes on the rhino as it's recorded. There'll be earmarkings. They'll be able to identify which individual it was, and this is part of a research program. You can see the landscape is fairly open. These bushes that occur in this area, it's a type of a euphorbia, which has a poisonous milky latex substance. It's poisonous to humans, but for black rhino, it's a fantastic source of food. The black rhino is a browser, so it feeds predominantly on leaves, as opposed to the white rhino, which is a grazer feeding on the grass. So the black rhino feeds on these bushes that you can see in this area. We head out literally with the Save the Rhino Trust trackers, and the tracking is done on foot. You view them on foot, and the goal is obviously to view them in a way that they don't know you're there, and then try and extract yourselves without disturbing the rhino. The purpose is not to disturb the rhino. And some fantastic sightings of these incredible creatures in this area. Although the camp is known as Desert Rhino Camp, there's also plenty of other things that occur in this area, things like springbok, the oryx, which I showed you earlier on. There's also a strong population of spotted hyena in the area. They're the predominant apex predator, although there are nomadic lions that move through the area. The lions are predominantly found a little bit north of this area. There's also a lot of endemism as far as birds occur. Namibia has plenty of endemic birds, so a lot to keep the creature entertained in this area. The main focus of the 2 days, though, at Desert Rhino Camp will be to view the desert-adapted black rhinos, and again, just in time exploring a totally different habitat type there. The night skies in Namibia are spectacular. In a country that's so, the population is so low, there is very, very little light pollution. As I mentioned at the start, if you head literally 20 minutes outside of any major center, there's hardly any human habitation. Very little light pollution. So the views of the night skies are spectacular, and it really is a big part of the experience. Just it's something we don't always get to appreciate back home, and we don't notice that we're not appreciating it. But when we get in a place like Namibia, where the sky, there's a myriad of stars, it really is something we appreciate every night we're out there. The last wildlife place that we'll visit on the Great Namibian Wildlife Safari is a camp called Ongava Tented Camp, which is situated in a private reserve, the Ongava Game Reserve, which is located on the southern side of Etosha National Park. The beauty about this is we spend 3 nights there, and it gives us an opportunity to explore both the Ongava Game Reserve, being a private reserve, and also head into the Etosha National Park, which is a national park, and that is the home of the famed Etosha Pan. The terrain in the Ongava Game Reserve is quite dense as far as the bush goes. It's got fantastic populations of lion in the area, and also good numbers of herbivores, things like impala, waterback, oryx, all occur in good numbers, kudu, in the reserve. And there's also a healthy population of rhino in the area. But during the time there, you'll spend time both in the reserve and also heading into Etosha National Park, getting in there early in the morning and traversing around the park. You can see here, this gives you an idea of the habitat inside Ongava Game Reserve. The beauty about it being a private reserve is that you do have the opportunity to get out of the vehicle with your guide and your expedition leader, who will be with you from start to finish on this trip. And you can look at whatever it is you see away from the vehicle and explore parts of the reserve. You can see from this image here, from the elevated view, that the bush is quite thick in certain areas, and then some open plains out towards the back part of the image there, which is very different to what you'll see in Etosha, where it's vast tracts of huge open plains dominated by big herds of zebra and also the springbok as well. As I mentioned, the white rhino also occur in the Ongava Game Reserve, so you do have the opportunity to view them here as well, and some fantastic opportunities to see them on foot. So these are the white rhino that are occurring in the Ongava area. They're also black rhino, but it's the white rhino that are seen more frequently in Ongava. As far as the vehicles go, you can see there's an image earlier with the springbok. The bulk of the activities are done in these open vehicles. There are some areas in Namibia where we do trips in closed vehicles. When we head into Sossusvlei, for instance, it can be a long morning there. So we go in a closed game view, whereas here we've got open sides. And those of you who are interested in photography, it provides it's literally a moving hide, allowing you to get up close and personal with the wildlife. You can see with this image here, this young male lion that's coming out of the bush. He's not worried at all with the presence of the vehicle there, and you can literally view them at your leisure. We take these same open vehicles into Etosha, and again, it just allows us for fantastic views of the wildlife within the park. Just to give you an idea of the contrasting scenery inside the national park, this is an image that would have been taken in the dry season. You can see, if you just look here, the diversity of species that comes to these water holes. There's a number of these springs just on the edge of Etosha Pan, and wildlife will head to these to drink. You often find the elephants coming down, late in the morning or in the middle of the day, allowing for some fantastic sightings. You can see here there's some common ostrich, springbok, giraffe. But what we'll often do on these trips is we head to these water holes and we'll sit there for quite some time. You often find that predators lie in ambush at these water holes, and in the dry season, when some of the prey species come down, they will pop out. Black-backed jackals use them as a place to hunt doves, guinea fowls, or some of the sandgrass, which is a small bird as well, which the jackals will hunt as they come down to drink at the waterholes. So huge amount of activity at these waterholes, and we'll definitely spend some time there in our days in Etosha National Park. You can see here later in the day, as it heats up, a number of elephants gathering at the waterhole. There's a couple of zebra in the back. If you look carefully between the elephants, you can see there's an oryx and plenty of springbok here in the foreground. And then you can see the game viewer that we head into Etosha National Park, and just to give you an idea of what that looks like. But really is a fantastic game experience with large numbers of wildlife occurring there. So Etosha is the last place that we visit on the trip, but the one thing I wanted to highlight, which is a theme that runs throughout the safari. There's two things I want to highlight in this image. The first is that you have an expedition leader with you from start to finish, and that person joins the dots and builds the whole experience as you traverse throughout Namibia. Whether you're in a vehicle, whether you're in a plane flying from one destination to another, or whether you're outside the vehicle looking at tracks of a scorpion, tracks of a June lark, looking at a plant or the medicinal uses of a herb, your expedition leader literally builds that experience with you from start to finish. And as you move from one place to the next, you learn more and more, and you just build on what you learned in the previous place. So that's the first thing I wanted to highlight here. The second thing is the cultures and people in Namibia is really unique. You will see people as you traverse between certain places, and it's really, sometimes you'll be on a morning game drive or safari, and you might drive past somebody's house and just get a sense of what life is like in the area. There's a lot of free roaming game in Namibia, and it's amazing to see people living in harmony for the most part with wildlife in the area. So the cultural element of a trip like this it's also huge, and it's not just the people that you meet outside of camp, but interacting with the expedition leaders, many of them who are born and bred, raised and have been schooled in Namibia, and also the people operating and working within the camps. I always find some of the best cultural experiences you have are when you interact with people around a campfire at night while you're looking at the stars. It's really just such an authentic way of getting to share cultures, as to understand people in Namibia, and Namibia people to understand different cultures. As far as the accommodations go, I just wanted to focus a little bit on the accommodations and how NatHab goes into choosing them. I think the key requirement for NatHab with accommodation is it's something that's got to be authentic, represent the habitat, and it's also got to be a small place. We don't want to be, we don't want these small groups of people that we travel with to be in a crowded environment, especially when you're exploring a place like Namibia, which is all about space. So a lot of thought goes into choosing the accommodations. The first place that we'll stay is the Olive Grove guest house in Windhoek, and this is where you will meet your expedition leader. On the first evening, dinner will be served there, and you'll do your trip briefing with the expedition leader that night before heading off the next morning to Sossusvlei. So this is literally just a place to get yourself settled after your long flights into Africa, relax and gear yourselves up for your 8 nights on safari. From the Olive Grove, we head down to the Sossusvlei area, where we'll stay at Little Kalalu. This is one of the units at Little Kilano. So again, it's a small camp. There's 11 of these. Some of the unique features about this is you can see on the right-hand side here, the beds can be set up outside. So guests can literally lie out under the stars. You can fall asleep looking up at this incredible night sky. There's also some stairs at the back of the room there. I don't know if you can see those just over the back left corner of the bed. Those go up onto the roof, and again, it just gives you this place to sit up there, have hot chocolate or whatever you want, a nightcap, and just look out over the plains here. You do look west towards the dunes themselves, but just amazing open skies, and getting a little bit elevated on top there gives you a spectacular view. So that is Little Kilano, where we spent 3 nights. Desert Rhino Camp, you could see literally situated within that same habitat that we saw the image of that black rhino in earlier. The beauty about these camps, you can see it's tented accommodation, but very much glamping. And the rationale behind the tents is we want to make sure that if you wake up in the middle of the night here, you can hear the sounds of the bush. You can hear the whooping hyena. You can hear the distant roar of a lion. You can hear a porcupine walking underneath your room, rattling its quills. You literally are participant in nature here rather than a spectator. And the camps are designed with that in mind. You really do feel like you're part of the whole picture. The camps are not fenced, so wildlife can wander through the camps. Obviously, the expedition leaders and camp guides will make sure it's safe at all times, but we want to blend into the wilderness as much as possible. So that's Desert Rhino Camp, where we spend 2 nights, and then finally heading up to Ongava Tented Camp, which is our base from which we explore the Ongava Game Reserve and Etosha National Park, where we'll do 3 nights. The camp has spectacular views over a waterhole which is out in front here. And in a country where there's a lot of dependence on wildlife, have a dependence on water, they'll come to that waterhole during the day very often to drink. And it's during the heat of the day, we typically do a morning activity, getting back at about 11, and then we'll head out later in the afternoon when it starts to cool down at about 3:30 or 4. But during the middle of the day, you can literally sit and watch the wildlife coming down to drink. When we head on safari as an expedition leader, I often get questions on the first night. What are we going to be eating? Is the food going to be okay? Am I going to lose weight? Do I need to bring 30 kind bars with me? The answer to this is the food on these trips is fantastic. It's everything that people are accustomed to around the world, and we always try and bring in some of the local flavors as well. But we're able to cater to all dietary requirements. You just have to let the people at NatHab know when you're booking your safari, and they will make sure that your dietaries are catered for. Vegan, vegetarian, paleo diets, whatever it might be, intermittent fasting, we can cater for all of it. We've seen it all before on the ground, and I promise you, you will be certainly well catered for. And if you think you're going to come to Africa to lose weight, you're going to have to be very disciplined about it if you are, because the food really is spectacular, and it's certainly a fantastic part of the whole experience. As far as people always ask, what are the temperatures like? What should we wear? What do we need to pack on a safari like this? Namibia, being a desert environment, it does, have some cooler times and some warmer times, and there are some quite extreme temperature variations. It can get pretty cold in the winter months, close to 0. and you will feel it on the early morning when you head out into the dunes. But the days are typically blue skies like you have here, and temperatures probably being in the around the upper 60s into the 70s, and then in the summer months heading up 90s to 100s in the heat of the day. What we always recommend people to do is to just pack layers, pack on a few layers in the morning when you head out. In summer, in the mornings, you probably don't need, but in the winter, a fleece and maybe a layer or two more. And as the day warms up, you can literally just peel those layers off. And for the most part, throughout the year, you're going to end up like you see these people here in the middle of the day. As far as rain, Namibia gets very little rainfall, so it's typically not something you have to worry about much at all. It is a dusty country, and sometimes the winds do pick up. But again, you know, we just manage that, and it doesn't really impact too much on the safari. For the most part, it's pretty still, clear days, like you see here. From a seasonality point of view, Namibia is a country that you can visit year-round. If you look at the places you visit on this Great Namibian Wildlife Safari, all of them are productive throughout the year. It can be in the Etosha area, depending on what you want to see. You get different experiences in the summer months and the winter months. So summer being from about November through to March, that's typically when Etosha will get its rains. During the dry months, maybe May through to September, October, you find more congregations of wildlife around the waterholes because there's not water available throughout the park. There's only a few limited areas with water. So in the dry season, May to October, some congregations around the waterholes. In the summer months, the game can disperse a little bit, but a totally different experience. The bush is lush green, beautiful colors, flowers, and a lot of migratory birds down at that time. So there's pros and cons of each time of year, but the dunes are spectacular throughout the year, and the desert rhino areas as well, spectacular throughout the year. So it really is a country that's not very seasonal at all. In terms of access to the country, I mentioned Windhoek really is the hub through which people enter with flights either from Europe or most people coming in from Johannesburg. It's about an hour, 40 minutes from Johannesburg. Easy flight, land at Windhoek. There's an airport lounge there. You'll be met and greeted at the airport. There'll be a person waiting for you as you come out the doors with your name on it, with the NATAB logo, something we're all familiar with. They will escort you into the lounge, and you will be then driven back to your hotel where you'll stay the first night and meet your expedition leader. So from the moment you come out the doors on arrival at Windhoek International Airport, you will be met and escorted until you go back through customs and immigration on your departure from Namibia. We've got somebody holding your hand throughout the journey. As far as the paperwork goes, you just need a passport which has a valid date. It's valid for 6 months beyond the date of arrival, and there's no visas are required and no COVID requirements at all as well. So all of that has been dropped in Namibia. Just need to be aware though, if you are going to be heading to other countries, there are still 1 or 2 countries in Africa where there are COVID requirements. I know Zimbabwe still requires people to produce vaccination certificates on arrival. So, but everything's dropped away in Namibia. As far as getting around the country on the safari goes, all of the linkages between the camps and between Windhoek are done on light aircraft transfers. This is a Cessna Grand Caravan, which is a 12-seater plane, and for the most part we'll be flying on these. It's a fantastic plane to fly with in Namibia. If you have a look at that, you'll see that the wings are above the eye line. So where you sit in the plane, you don't have the wings obscuring your views. And Namibia really is a spectacular country to fly over. And your expedition leader and the pilots in these planes will be pointing out prominent landmarks as you fly along the way. So the flight is very much a huge part of the journey. Your longest flight on a trip like this, you're looking about an hour and 20 minutes in this caravan. We land, all of the camps have bush airstrips that are situated very close to camp. You're looking about, once you land, there'll be a guide there to meet you and the expedition leader and drive you into camp. And you're looking at about, depending on the camp, 15 to 25 minutes, and you're at the lodge where you're going to be staying. While we on the subject of Namibia, I just wanted to touch on one or two other camps that are prominent in Namibia and are visited on some of the NatChap trips, such as the Wild Namibia Photo Safari and the Epic Botswana and Namibia safaris, both the standard one and the photographic safaris. This is Huanab Skeleton Coast Camp, which is visited on those trips. It allows people to get out to the Atlantic Ocean and see the contrast between the dunes and the ocean. Here, a Cape Fur seal colony at the coast. It's an area with great wildlife in the Huanab River, good elephant populations, giraffe, and sometimes people are fortunate enough to also see the adapted lions that occur in this area. So really is a spectacular area. And again, if you just look at the scenery of all of these wildlife shots, the backdrops on which you photograph in these subjects is truly spectacular. So Huanab is definitely an area of interest, the Skeleton Coast area. I also just wanted to touch, because this is a photograph taken from the Okavango Delta, because we also have the Epic Botswana and Namibia Photo Safari, where people can combine Namibia and then follow it up with Botswana on the same trip. And it really is a fantastic way to see two contrasting ecosystems. You can see here the dense waterways and the lush habitat of the Okavango Delta, and coming out of Namibia to experience that, it really is a stark contrast, and just it leads for a spectacular safari. Natural habitat can also, for those people who want to just do any of their set departure trips, they can always do add-ons, extensions, a few nights before, and combine that anywhere in Southern Africa. The travel designers there are really skilled and know the products throughout the sub-region extremely well, and can tailor something that's perfect for you and link that up with, you know, a set departure trip with expedition leader accompanying you on there. The one thing I just wanted to touch on as well, that I don't forget, from a currency point of view, if you on a trip like the Great Namibia Wildlife Safari, you don't need much money at all. All the gratuities have been taken care for by NatApp. You might want to carry a little bit extra just in case you want to pass on a gratuity to somebody you think may have gone above and beyond. As far as the currency goes in Namibia, the currency they use is the Namibian dollar, which is linked to the South African rand. It's a currency that's not used anywhere else in the world. US dollars are widely accepted throughout the country by people from a gratuity point of view. And in major centers like Windhoek, you'll be able to make purchases with credit cards. So it's really not a case of having to go out and source local currency before you come on a trip like this. Those of you into photography and wanting to charge iPhones or whatever it might be to take images, or just cameras, there's a variety of plug points in the rooms catering for the different plug points. So we can assist with that. So you'll be covered in that regard. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that those are the key things from my side that I just wanted to finish up with. I'm just going to move on to one slide to leave you with that before we open it up to Robin questions. And it's this one here. For me, it's just something which truly encapsulates Namibia. Again, I started with one oryx, but I'm going to end with one oryx as well. It's not about vast numbers of wildlife, but what you're seeing there truly is spectacular. It's desert adapted species, it's a diversity of species, and the habitats, landscapes, people, culture, sense of space, contrasts. It's an incredible, incredible country. And for those of you who haven't been, I urge you to put it on your list of places to go to, because it's unlike anything else you will have seen before. And I know, having spent a lot of time with NatHab travelers, you guys really do have an appreciation of pristine wilderness areas, and this is certainly something which will touch your hearts. So I just wanted to thank you for taking time to listen to me talk about something that I'm very passionate about. And yeah, I'll open it up now with Rob. If there are any questions and you guys want to fire away, I'll do what I can to answer them.
All right, thank you so much. Now, before we start in with the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. So let me ask you about a question that I've gotten a lot of. Can you talk about insects, mosquitoes, flies? Should I be worried about them? Am I going to get malaria? Can you help me with that?
Yeah, it's a good question, Rob. A lot of the insects in areas in Africa where you do get large populations of them, it's typically linked to water. We find like the larger eruptions of insects are in areas where it's hot, muggy, and a lot of water. In Namibia, there's not a lot of that. So typically you don't get a huge number of insects, but there are occasions, maybe after rain, where you might get a few that come out for a night. There are mosquitoes that occur in Namibia. From a malaria point of view, it's not a major concern. I think malaria has been recorded in Etosha, but really, really, really low risk in Namibia. You do get mosquitoes down in the southern part in the Sossusvlei area, but in low numbers and nothing to be concerned of. They are there, but in way lower numbers than we find elsewhere in Africa, all of the insects. So definitely not a concern.
So what about scorpions or spiders? Are we going to have any issues with those?
You won't have issues. Obviously at night, it's just a case of wearing closed shoes when you're walking around. But no issues. I mean, we go out looking for them in the evenings. The guides will have spotlights with you. You get accompanied to and from your rooms in the evening, so you'll have a guide with you at the night. But nothing to worry about as far as those guys. We actually, on the safaris in the dunes, we try and find, there's this spider known as white lady that we look for. It buries itself in the sand, and we're out looking for that, but nothing to worry about as far as terrorizing spiders or anything like that go.
Great, thank you for addressing that. So let's talk about accommodations for just a second. We saw a picture of a bathroom. Is that going to be a shared accommodation, or will each tent have their own bathroom?
No, all of the bathrooms are ensuite. So yeah, all closed in ensuite bathrooms.
Great, thank you. Is there a lot of hiking involved in the trip?
No, it depends. There are options for individuals. Like I mentioned, that the place on this safari where most of the walking is done is down in the Sossusvlei area in the dunes. And there's literally two options. I've been with some groups where the local camp guide might take people on a longer walk to the top of the dune, and those people who want to just do a shorter walk can literally do 20 minutes. They're in Dead Vlei. It's a flat walk and pretty easy walk. So there's options. It depends. Those who want to do it can do it, but if you don't want to do it, it's no problem. We've got enough guides and expedition leaders to cater for everybody's needs. But it's not a super strenuous safari at all.
Can you talk about how photography trips might differ from the regular trip?
Yeah, I think it's just typically less people on a vehicle. Photographers, when you have a lot of space to move around. And from an expedition leader's point of view, you may go out a little bit earlier wanting to catch the sun rising. A lot of the activities are focused around getting the best shot. You know, you might set up some astrophotography at night around camp, spending a lot of time waiting at waterholes for things to happen. So a lot is focused around getting the best shot. And from a guiding point of view, a lot of the expedition leaders' attention will be on helping guests get the best shots, focus on composition, that kind of thing. Whereas, and obviously giving the wildlife information as well, but a big focus will just be on the photographic component, looking for those best images.
So as far as like camera equipment goes, would you recommend bringing a tripod on the trip?
A tripod's useful for the nighttime photography. I think, you know, the people who are really serious about photography, it is useful to have a tripod with you for the nighttime photography. In the vehicle, you don't need that at all. NATAB always packs bean bags in for the travelers. And a beanbag is the perfect tool to use in the vehicle. You just rest your camera and lens on that, and it provides you with a very, very steady base from which to take photos. But it's just really the nighttime stuff. So if that is something you're into and you want longer exposures, then a tripod can be useful.
Great. So are there the opportunities to see petroglyphs on this trip?
On this trip, no. The place where the petroglyphs occur is at Twyfelfontein, which is about, it's quite a drive from the Desert Rhino camp. So no, on this trip, that site, the Twyfelfontein site, is not visited, no.
What about cheetahs? Would I be able to see cheetahs on this trip?
Yeah, you will be able to see cheetah occur free roaming throughout Namibia, but not in huge numbers. I've seen cheetah at Little Kulala before, and that was with a group with NATAB, and I've also seen tracks of cheetah at Little Kulala where we didn't see them. But Etosha is a very good place for cheetah. They like the open plains. So it is a good place for cheetah, but certainly not guaranteed. I'd say your best chance would be in Etosha National Park for cheetah there.
Great, thank you for that. So in terms of US dollars, is there a reasonable amount to tip a guide for a day trip?
Yeah, so on these scheduled departures, that is all included, and we do take care of that. The expedition leaders will make sure that the camp guides are receiving their gratuity, so that's all covered. But if people do want to give something additional, you know, it can typically be an additional amount, $5, $10 per person per day if you wanted to do something additional. But it's so hard to put a number on it, because you form a bond with that guide when you're there, not only the expedition leader but the camp guides, and it's so hard to quantify what that number will be. But just know that NATAB takes very good care of the camp guides and staff throughout the journey.
Great, thank you so much for addressing that. Unfortunately, that's going to be the last question that we do have time for today. So I want to throw it back to you for your closing comments.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I just want to say is I'm always so, it's so impressive for me to sit here in South Africa and see the number of people that jump on a call for an hour a day to hear about a country like Namibia and about the wildlife and beautiful wilderness places in Namibia. And it's in a way, it makes me honored, and I just want to thank you guys for doing that. It's huge for us here in Africa. It means a lot to us, and yeah, we hope to see you out there, and we just want to thank you for taking the time to learn about an incredible place. So thank you very much.
Simon, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also
Thanks,
like to
Rob.
thank, my pleasure. I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. If you're interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab, give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.